the situation, as far as I can see it now, is possibly the worst in terms of the attack on civil liberties that we've experienced since the worst days of the miners' strike, when exactly the same that happened to Joe was taking place, where homes were being raided, people were being restricted on where they could travel in the country, and people were being locked up. I don't think we'd see that again, but it's clearly happened, and the situation now is, I think, is deeply worrying. On the environmental campaigns, not only have we seen protests being limited and prescribed by orders from the police, we're seeing people arrested for acts which, again, in the past, we would just see as normal protests rather than crimes. And then what we're finding is when on the environmental campaigns, when people are going to court, they're not allowed to present their argument that the reason they're undertaking these actions is to tackle climate change and save the future of the planet. And then what happens is having the right to a fair hearing restricted, because actually what we've found in the past, if you can present a rational case before a jury on a higher responsibility than just abiding by the law of restricting protest, if there's a higher objective, particularly about a moral objective like saving the planet, often juries will prevent people being prosecuted. They'll release them. But because people can't put that argument, and because a lot of these cases are just coming before judges, what's happening is, and we've seen it, some of the longest sentences we've ever seen for political protests in our history. Some of the environmental campaigners have been given 4 years inside, and for a lot of them, it's the first time they've ever been involved in the political protest in this way. And I've met some of them, and it's incredibly distressing for their families. Since then, it's ratcheted up even further in terms of what's happened with regard to Palestine demonstrations. Each of the demonstrations now, particularly in this recent period, the police have gone into the negotiations with the Palestinian demonstration organisers, the different groups, and increasingly now there's restrictions placed upon where people can march, whether they can march, when they march, and also even on the timescale of how long the protest will last itself. And that resulted in January on restrictions on we were trying to march to the BBC because we wanted to demonstrate to the BBC about its failure to provide proper and balanced coverage of what's happening in Gaza. That was restricted, that was prevented. And then in the end, we were forced into a static march. And when we went through the simple process of trying to lay flowers at the feet of the police at the edge of the march, we held to the restrictions given upon us and then got waved through, and then people were arrested. And again, we've got to a situation now where the restrictions are so heavy, and then when people get arrested, that people can be facing quite significant sentences. So it's really, I think we've gone beyond anything that we've seen for nearly 40 or 50 years. We've gone to another level now with the prescription of Palestine action. And we have to be really careful on what we say in even addressing that issue. I've written to the Home Secretary. I wrote over a week ago, and I'll be raising it in Parliament on Monday because I haven't had a response. Just asking for what are the guidelines of what you can say about Palestine action. Is it legal or illegal to say that you disagree with the prescription? We don't know at the moment. Is it in any way illegal now to even question the government bringing the prescription forward to Parliament? And as we saw last week, the law is so uncertain that people were being, they were being threatened with arrest by the police simply for holding a banner up saying Free Palestine. So it's this level of repression has moved to a completely different level now. And as I say, it's deeply worrying. My anxiety, there's the big march tomorrow. My anxiety is that might be used because if people do turn up with banners or placards referring to Palestine action or even less, my worry is that that will be used by the police to argue for the banning of the demonstrations overall. And that's one of the things that they've been muting, because their argument at one point was that the demonstrations are so frequent, they're disrupting London overall, and therefore they should be restricted or indeed banned. And I think that's the next stage on if we're not careful, which would be a huge assault on civil liberties. The other issue, just relating to Joe, I've tabled questions now to the Home Secretary asking what discussions she's had with the Metropolitan Police Commissioner on the policing and engagement with neurodiversity and neurodiverse people. I've also tabled a question now with regard to supportive environments as well. What guidelines are given by the Home Office to police forces about the access of police to supportive environments and sort of supportive accommodation, but also what guidelines have been given to police forces overall and what training in the development of the interaction with neurodiverse people. Because to have this sort of heavy-handed policing that we saw meted out to Joe takes no account of his own personal situation. As Joe says, it took no account whatsoever of the supportive environment that he and his neighbours live. So again, it's just there's an element of quite brutal policing that's taking place here that we've got to expose and seek, first of all, to prevent, but also seek remedies when it happens. So I just overall believe we're in quite a dangerous moment when it comes down to some basic civil liberties and also some policing practices in relation to the neurodiverse community that we've got to broaden the debate and widen and, well, mobilise against. And that's what we'll be trying to do in Parliament. But as all of you know, really, most change comes from outside of Parliament than within it. And therefore, exactly as Joe has said, we're going to have to look at how we go about that. Just on the point of information, Scotland Yard is just around the corner from Westminster, Joe. And it most probably will have to check out what your bail conditions are and what the limits are and how they define Westminster. But I think you'd be caught if we were protesting outside the police station. And one of the things I'll try and do is go inside the Scotland Yard to ask for a meeting with the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, because I want to know what he thinks was happening when they raided your accommodation and what he thought would be the consequence of their actions in relation to the feelings and worries and fears of those people who live around you. So that's one of the action points from tonight.